and really things began to become Protestant and under Elizabeth, and she was quite a strong ruler. She was also, though, coming off of a time where there was a lot of fighting between Protestants and Catholics, and things just were not looking very good for the peace of her religion. Things just didn't seem to be fully functioning, and she decided she had to put her foot down. So she kind of influenced the Parliament, which is kind of the legislative body there in England, to kind of pass a law where there was a melding of the Protestant and Catholic faiths. That kind of gave everyone one shining light of religion, a standard of religion to follow. And although she was Protestant, she kind of melded the two religions together in somewhat of a compromise. She is referred to as a survivor because she executed someone who decided to assassinate her. So that, by definition, kind of makes her a survivor. And she was a strong, aggressive, and manipulative. She was not to be messed around with. She was very aggressive in Spain on the war front and on the home front, domestic and foreign. She was a very strong leader, which was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to watch her and watch her do her thing. So, as she kind of had to deal with all the craziness came before her, she really kind of brought a guiding hand to the whole situation. So, she brought a level of religious peace to England, and some Protestants pushed for Elizabeth to make more far-reaching church reforms, but at the same time, Catholics tried to overthrow Elizabeth and replace her with her cousin, the Catholic Mary, Queen of Scots. Elizabeth faced also threats from Philip II, the Catholic King of Spain, who we just talked about, and then they had that fight that Elizabeth won. So, anyway, we turn now to our next big absolute monarch, and that is going to be, for our next absolute monarch, King Louis XIV. He's a French king, and he was a very interesting guy. Here was what he did politically, economically, and socially. He was quickly authorized as a strong authoritarian government. He really kind of kept the nobles in one big palace to live amongst themselves and really not have any power anymore while he did the actual ruling. He may have been only 4 years old when he came to power, but he quickly assumed the throne. He decided to weaken the power of these nobles and, again, strengthen the central government was another big thing he did. Louis XIV and his economist, Jean-Claude Colbert, exercised the theory of mercantilism on the French economy. He put restrictions on religious freedom of the Huguenots, which slowed down economic growth. So yeah, that wasn't the best move. Louis XIV was not the best on when it came to pretty much basic religious freedom. So that was one of his drawbacks. Let's take a look at just pretty much his basic policy here. His politics in governing style, he ruled in an effective style and did a good job of keeping his people safe, but did not rule with any kind of checks and balances, which is a little bit concerning for people who want to be ensured that they're living kind of in a safe society. Because that's always definitely a concerning thing when you don't have any kind of checks and balances and authoritarian ruler. But he did a good job of keeping his people safe, and he wasn't corrupt or immoral. He worked to reduce tariffs and increase overall French businesses. He was pretty successful on that front. Louis's reign was a significant setback to religious freedom, though, in peace within France. He also was a conquering force in the region with no specific broader goal or organization. He spent a ton of money on wars, which did not help the economy at all. Let's be honest. He also supported and facilitated the growth of culture and art throughout his reign. So that's a little bit of a positive side if you value arts in a society. So they all, if you kind of wanted to sum him up in one sentence, it would probably be like, they should remember him kind of as a strong but occasionally over-aggressive ruler who led to some problems later on. Louis XVI is a little bit concerning, just to say the least. He kind of led to the downfall of the French abroad because of the French Revolution. You may be familiar with Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake, although she didn't actually say that. So there is that to keep in mind as well. All right, so we're going to move on now to our next absolute monarch. All right, so yeah. And our next absolute monarch for you today is going to be as follows. It's going to be the absolute rulers of Russia and Peter the Great. So Peter the Great, the big thing he did was he brought Russia into the modern age. He came before Ivan the Terrible. He was the Grand Duke of Russia, the first Tsar. He terrorized the boyars, which were nobles, and he even killed his own son. It was not great. But Peter the Great eventually then took over, and as his name suggests, he was pretty great. He modernized Russia through westernization. He took a big trip through Russia through Europe, with all his friends, and he was kind of like making havoc in places all around Europe, and people are like, oh, he just trashed the apartment or whatever in the place that he was staying in. But that's not important. The important thing is he really came back after he was attacked. And fought off the Swedes to establish a port city on the water that we now know today as St. Petersburg. Naming St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg, and it was founded by Peter. You get the connection? You get what I'm trying to say there? Good. Anyway, so he had that going for him, and also he was someone who really brought the West, Russia, into the modern times. Because he thought it was lagging behind Europe in the technological advancements, and he decided he wanted to compete with Europe. He ensured himself with the power of an absolute monarch by taking away powers originally held by the church. He severely limited the power of the Orthodox Church that dominated Russia beforehand. He significantly elevated those in the lower class and hurt nobles by granting them less power, and he gave serfs and peasants many more economic opportunities. Poor and disenfranchised citizens in Russia greatly benefited from Peter's reforms, while the nobles and Russia's aristocrats were definitely kept way more in check. Pretty much the main thing that you should probably be associating Peter the Great with is obviously westernization, because he really, if Russia didn't get more modern quick, they would have been in a good deal of trouble. So now we turn our attention to our next absolute monarch, and you may get a hint by my accent. It is England. So sorry. Sorry for that. Yeah, Charles I. He is going to be it. He quarreled with the Parliament a lot, and he kind of led to a civil war. And so pretty much what happened was, and things were not really going so well for him. England kind of became a limited monarchy because of him. In 1215, English nobles forced King John to sign the Magna Carta. This is way back. This guaranteed Englishmen cannot be fined or imprisoned except according to the laws of the land, and kind of laid out the basic rights that humans should live by in a civilized country, kind of establishing, there is some things that have been repurposed in kind of the Constitution, which is something worth taking note. The Parliament was established as a legislative body made up of nobles in the House of Lords and elected representatives in the House of Commons. Parliament claimed the right to approve taxes, so they had that little benefit, to kind of check on the power of the king or queen. During two revolutions, the Parliament established its supremacy over the king. The Bill of Rights of 1689 confirmed the English monarchs could not collect new taxes or raise an army without Parliament's consent. And this kind of all happened over the reign of Charles. He was taking power after power. He was taking step after step, and he was trying to make himself an authoritarian leader. This concerned a lot of people, and led to a revolution. After which, the Parliament won the revolution, beheaded King Charles, and then kind of had Oliver Cromwell, who's the general that led the Parliament's side to victory against the monarchy. They put things to power, and they kind of made some agreements and set things up and set up a new government that would work for all English. And then things got even hairier when Parliament tried to limit his power, and he revolted against them. So not very fun there. Cromwell was not a king, but he governed through military rule. He called the Parliament together, but quickly dissolved the group by force when members tried to rule his power. After Cromwell's death, an assembly similar to the Parliament was elected to determine what to do with Charles II, the executed king's son, and he agreed to work with Parliament on all decisions if he was to claim the throne. So he agreed to work with Parliament, and that kind of restored the monarchy back to the way it was before. Now, as we turn away from monarchs and rulers, we turn now to thought and enlightenment. So this is the age of enlightenment and the scientific revolution time, people. So Galileo and Sir Isaac Newton were some of the very successful scientists during this time. They used questioning and experiments to figure out groundbreaking new things and really ideas that are still used today about space, gravity, and the way we live our lives. So pretty much, I'm sure you know some of the things that they did. And they also took some power away from the church, questioning some of their most important ideas. So Galilei, as they call him, he found out some pretty new ideas that got him in so much trouble with the church that he was actually called to Rome and forced to repent everything he said. Later, though, we kind of knew and realized that he was right. So they were pretty much, they came to the idea that gradually, eventually, and slowly, that the Enlightenment thinkers are right, and the church kind of had it backwards. But these guys were some major, powerful thinkers here that were very inspiring and did a great job of kind of pushing our society out towards the modern way we think now. Anyway, we now turn our attention to some of the Enlightenment thinkers as well, who also kind of partook in this scientific revolution, and one of them is Thomas Hobbes. And one of the things that he said was it was pretty clear. He was like, people are the worst. I mean, don't you feel like that sometimes? But anyway, he believed in an absolute monarchy. He thought people were corrupt, and the only way they could be ruled effectively was by one overwhelming power. He believed kind of in a strong believer in an authoritarian government. He believed that he wrote the book The Leviathan, and that people had to kind of agree to give up their social rights for general, stronger protection. John Locke believed that the government should serve the people. Rousseau believed that religion and ethnic diversity were the most important. Montesquieu believed in the separation of powers in government, the judicial, legislative, executive branches. Where do we see that today? Hint, hint, it's our government. So the religion was good for unification. He also kind of supported religion as well. Voltaire believed in religious freedom and that everyone should get an education no matter what class that you came from. Also, Mary Wollstonecraft was another one of the big Enlightenment thinkers. She said, do not rely on all-powerful being to help, some sort of all-powerful being. And she was kind of the world's first feminist. She kind of supported the young minds of the world. She was very big into education. She thought women should have equal rights, which kind of makes sense given the position where she was coming from. And she was very big in pushing forward that agenda of equality. And these were some of the very first modern thinkers that we had that kind of led us into away from the thoughts of traditional rulership and into the some of the ideas that we have now. So that's our entire year, folks. We have it all documented for you to review and review and take notes on and study over and over again until your finals. So thank you so much for listening. That's it. You made it through the whole entire year of Global. How do you feel? It's a big accomplishment. You should be very proud of yourself. That's how you should feel. Proud. All right, we are about to hit a 3-hour mark, which is the limit for the amount of time that we can broadcast on air live. So we got to say goodbye. Goodbye, everyone. And you can always use this to study whenever you want.